Hello Zambia, hello Africa, my name is Ndanji Duncan Simmons and welcome to this special interview, and of course powered by Fortress Media and Vetex. Gratitude to Cavendish University for making this interview possible. I'm super excited today because I'm chatting with somebody who's not only inspirational, but actually I'm in love with a vision because it's about uplifting the vulnerable people and it's about sharing, which is very important. And we need to learn one or two things from this interview. I'm glad that you have joined me. Just diving into it. Welcome to Zambia. How has it been so far, being in Zambia?
It's amazing. It's actually my first time in the country. And I'm so impressed, like the people have just been so kind, so accommodating. It was a warm welcome the minute I got off the plane. So I have nothing but great things to say about Zambia.
You have done quite remarkable work on the global scale, very inspiring to young girls. Now your story is very interesting because a young girl from Kakuma camp, a refugee camp, to the United States, beauty pageant winner. Of course, so much conversation in that area, issues of hijab, all that conversation. But today, I want to have a conversation around humanitarian because it's all about uplifting the vulnerable people. Now, Zambia on its own, it's got stuff that is also kind of like wrangled around as problems. And issues of refugee, remember what I think there's one key aspect that everybody says that we are all potential refugee. Because who knows, maybe we might have war right now and we'll be rushing to another country. So how then can we now tap into elevating people, because they're also humans, to give them opportunity, equal access to not only education, but quality education, healthcare, immunization, as well as nutrition. But for example, tell us a bit about how your work has been in this particular sector.
Yes, so my work really started with even when I was in high school, right? I used to volunteer for our little campaign to just go around during Halloween. It's called Trick or Treat for Good, right? And so it started even when I was younger because of my childhood. I don't know if it's like survivor syndrome, but I understand and very aware that my family got the $1 billion lottery to even migrate to a place like America. Was it hard transitioning and getting accustomed with the country? Yes, but it's the land of opportunity. It's the land that educated me. It's the land that got me to where I'm at today. I'm so grateful. But at the same time, I recognize that there's still kids that were born the same day as me in Kakuma refugee camp who are now my age, who are still there, And a lot of them have since had their own babies. And so I don't want to waste that opportunity. I feel like God put me here for a reason. I feel like even that opportunity to migrate, I know it wasn't just so I could be successful for myself and my family. It very much is to go back to my refugee community and bring solutions to the issues that we're faced with today.
Yeah. Your parents walked 12 days from Somalia to Kenya. Are you able to recollect any thoughts about that experience before the American aspect?
It's so hard for me to wrap my mind around the trauma that my mother went through to even get us to the refugee camp in Kenya. She really is superwoman. And her story is also very common among the refugee community. Whether people flee because of war, like my family, or famine, it could be so many things that could leave somebody in the same situation that we were in, We saw what happened with COVID. Something that happened in China quickly became all over the world. And for the first time, people found themselves living with the same circumstances that refugees go through on a day-to-day basis. And unfortunately, we are now out of COVID, well, not out of COVID, but we're slowly going back to normalcy. But we cannot forget that there's still refugees, that is their reality. And unfortunately, sometimes it could be for the rest of their life. So I'm hoping that we are more compassionate as a society. Through COVID, people have had job insecurity or for the first time, their future is in limbo. Our children, even in America, couldn't go to school. They had to stay at home. And so those are all problems that we are faced with, but it makes you resilient. And I want to see this community coming together. I want to see more partnerships like UNHCR and Cavendish University, where it's not just about, okay, the students that we have here, but okay, how can we support the kids that have fled to come here that are in the 3 settlements, you know? So I really love the innovation, this idea to bring education directly to the settlements, opposed to, okay, we need to get legal papers, you know, refugees are not allowed to migrate as easy as other citizens. And so I love this concept where we're bringing education straight to the camp so it can be more accessible.
Yeah. I know you were very young when you left Kakuma, a refugee camp. At 7 years, you went to the US. But the conversation there is, there are many girls out there who are in camps, for example, battling the challenges that happens there. But suffice to say, you had a different experience. You said actually it was awesome.
Oh, it was great. Wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Granted, malaria, very common occurrence, just like how we have the flu in America. And it's interesting because, you know, my mom, our first home that I could remember in the camp, it was not even made from a tent. It was scraps and sticks that, you know, my mom found and people helped create. That little thing was where my mom, my little brother, and I slept. Our bed was made out of mud, right? But even with all of that, I think because I was born into that circumstance and that's all that I knew at the time, I was able to rely on fellow refugee kids, you know, and I learned so much early on about diversity because our camp, yes, there's a large Somali population in Kakuma, but there was refugees from Ethiopia, from neighboring countries. So early on, I got to really see and appreciate people who are different than me and people who have found themselves as refugees, but through different circumstances. So that is a wealth of information that not everybody has the privilege to understand, much less actually survive. So now we're getting to a place in society, refugees should not be surviving, they should be thriving. You know, we need to see more universities like Cavendish coming to the settlements and actually providing solutions. We need to walk away from, oh, refugees, we just need housing for them, we just need clean water, medical care. Yes, those things are fundamental, and yes, it's important, but when do we move past that and move into solutions? And I really believe solutions have to come from fellow refugees, and I strongly believe decisions about refugees should not be made without refugees having a seat at the table.
There is a famous quote, as we are winding up, there's a famous quote that I'm intrigued by, and this is not being afraid to be the first. As well as you tackle that aspect in terms of culture diversity, penetrating into other communities and also trying to fit in, how then can young girls and even those that are wanting to break barriers and change the narrative for their lives and their families and their country, how then should they transcend from that point where they are to where they need to be?
I always say it's not easy being the first in anything, you know, and thank God I've had situations growing up where I found myself naturally being the first to do something, whether it was growing up in a predominantly white community in Minnesota and then going on to my senior year of high school and being crowned homecoming queen. That was just something that never happened, at least in my town. And then that quickly inspired me to compete for Miss Minnesota USA, where again, I was the first to wear a hijab and a modest swimsuit for the competition. And no, I did not win, but I love that everybody assumes that I did, because I did win something even greater than a crown. I got this opportunity. I broke so many barriers in fashion. I was the first ever visibly Muslim woman to grace the cover of British Vogue in over 106 years. So with that, I also recognize that that's not my passion. It's fun being a cover girl. It's fun showing up to work, nails, makeup, beautiful clothes, work with amazing designers. And I found that that was not as fulfilling for me as doing projects like this. I'm on the ground. I'm actually seeing the students. I'm actually communicating. I'm shaking hands and giving hugs. And it's just such an intimate experience, right? That's what I need to do.
Yeah. In 2018, you became UNICEF ambassador, and your work focused around children. Now, I want to speak about culture in this angle because your career, for example, you had to quit because, and I'm looking at the conflict between identity as respecting your culture and what you believe, and also people embracing that, regardless of the field that you enter. Why did you decide that, and what was the future like then after that decision?
I mean, it was not an easy decision, but I think like most people, I'm not anything special. A lot of people during COVID, they made career transitions, changes. Some people left an entire industry to pursue something completely different. And so same thing happened with me. I loved my career in fashion. I have nothing really bad to say about it. They treated me with respect. But then I noticed that the fellow Muslim hijab wearing models that have since come after me, through our conversations, I quickly realized they're not getting the same treatment as me, right? Whether it's like having my own private dressing room, getting to wear my hijab however I want to wear it. And yes, even myself, it got harder as the years progressed, and as I did more campaigns and ad work, I quickly realized even with myself, my hijab was getting smaller. I would use things like jeans or other types of things in place of a traditional hijab. And I just didn't like the direction that I was going. And so I stopped, I quit. And that's the message I want to share with young girls. It's okay to say no. It's never too late to reinvent yourself, right? And opportunities are all around us, but you need to get comfortable getting into those spaces, regardless of, oh, there's nobody that looks like me. That is even more important for you to then step out and be there. And I loved what Reggie was saying earlier about you need to stay ready, right? Because when the opportunity presents itself, you want to be like, okay, I actually have like let's say I have the tools to do this job. I have the qualifications to do this job. But if you're not ready, opportunities will just fly by.
Yeah, that is true. My last set of questions would be in terms of leaders. And I know the biggest contributor to children displacement, for example, is conflict, war, beside poverty, of course. And people tend to leave their country because either war or poverty. Now, in terms of leaders, what message would you like to give now for the sake of, as we talk about refugee, because we understand that they're leaving their countries because either there could have been war, could have been poverty and whatnot. What word of advice would you give our leaders in terms of creating solutions, sustainable solutions for their people?
I would just ask our leaders, which side do you want to be when we look back in history? Do you want to be the villain or do you want to be the hero, right? So I think there's great responsibility with being a leader, but you also have to understand the people that suffer the most when it comes to war, famine, anything that could cause somebody to be displaced, the children are the ones who are affected the most, right? So look at it from a human standpoint. How would you feel if, God forbid, something happened? And we know through COVID, instantly your whole life could change, the whole trajectory could change, right? And so it's like, imagine your child, you have to be that empathetic. Like, how would I want my own child to be treated in the event that an emergency happens, right? And so why is it different for African children, for children in Asia, for children in developing countries? Why can't we view them as children who need protection, children who we need to invest in? Because those kids grow up. Are they going to be part of the problem and repeat that same cycle of poverty? Or are they going to make it out and be the problem solvers, the people who are bringing in solutions? Because why? We lived it, right? That is a huge thing to keep in mind, because you know solutions, you know what worked, you know what didn't work. And so applying your own lived experience into the work that you're doing, I've never been this fulfilled ever in my life. This is the happiest I've been. This is the most content I've been. And so I'm just so grateful to Cavendish University, this partnership with UNHCR. And again, I'm so excited to come back a couple years, meet with the students again, follow their story, as some of them maybe even return to the camps and be teachers or do programs with the refugees that are still in the settlement.
Yeah, great stuff. So before I let you go, there's something that I like to do. It's called RQ. It's a random question session, yeah? So this is a fun session. You relax, and you also get to have fun, yeah? Okay. So the first time you arrived in Zambia, what's the very thing that you were intrigued by?
Okay, the weather. And maybe it's because I live in Minnesota and we just got out of a huge winter storm that lasted all the way to March, believe it or not. So the first thing like I noticed was, wow, the temperature is just a dream. It wasn't too cold, it wasn't too hot, it was nice and sunny. And so that was kind of like the first thing I noticed.
Cool stuff. Your favorite dish?
Sushi.
Why sushi?
I don't know. I discovered it and I was like, I've been missing out my whole life.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
And you know what? It's a privilege, right? Because I would never dare have sushi in Kakuma.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, you know what? Why don't I enjoy the finer things in life? Fish?
Are you having sushi in Zambia?
As an African, if you told me a couple years ago you're going to be eating raw fish with rice, I would have been like, really?
Yeah.
But I love it now.
The memory that you still think about, that you hold dear to your heart, the memories that you think about, what memories are those?
You know, it's actually a crazy story. So there was like, it's a memory from the camp. Of course, I was 7 years old, so I couldn't retain everything from the camp. But I do remember this one time where there was like this, you know, we had wild dogs in the camp. And so there was like a baby dog. And so I would like steal food that my mom would give us. And mind you, these are food rations, right? Everything counts for how many people are in your family. And I would still steal some food and like leave it out. And then the food would always disappear. And as a kid, I thought, oh, the baby came back and ate it. And my mom, later on in life, she's like, that baby probably was eaten or something. And it was just something else that like, you know, took the food and stuff. So that was probably one memory.
Okay. Fourth random question is, if you were next to your mom now, what would you tell her?
I'd be like, I think you did good, right? I think you raised me okay. I turned out okay, didn't I?
That is great. That is awesome. That is awesome. Amongst the countries that you've visited, in terms of success stories, because you have been with the people, you have understood problems right from the grassroots. What is something that you would think people would do better to make their lives much more fruitful?
I think it always starts with empathy, right? Even if you can't offer anything else, at least spread positive words when it comes to refugees, right? Because so often it's always the scars and people forget that these are human beings at the end of the day. You think every day they're stressed and depressed. No, we even as refugees, we take pride in the little things. You know, people are still able to find happiness. And so that is what I want to see changed, is this narrative that refugees are just helpless people. A lot of them are actually entrepreneurs. Even my mother, I remember when she was in the camp, she would sell unsi, she would sell potatoes, she had a little tomato stand at one point. Refugees are very, very talented, and it's just an entire pool of creativity and talent, untapped, that's just sitting. And so it's like, imagine if big brands and companies invested. See, like if Google was like, okay, we're going to set up an entire computer lab. How would that change the trajectory of those refugees even in 5 years? What would happen in 20 years, right? Because our world, people are kind of moving away from labor jobs to more soft jobs, right? So you need computer skills, you need all these things that right now the infrastructure in refugee camps don't have.
Your last remarks to the viewers as we conclude the interview.
I would say, what's the word for love in Zambian?
Narikutema.
Nala?
Narikutema.
Naluktame? Zambia.
But you tried. That was the Bemba version.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the Bemba version. There are a lot. 73 tribes.
Okay.
It's a mouthful anyway.
All
yeah,
right.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Yeah. Is that your last remarks?
Well, yeah.
Okay, cool stuff. Well, viewers, there you had it. I love the saying by Confucius. Confucius says a person who says he can and the person who says he can't, they're both usually right. And we need to lend a hand to our brothers and sisters, and particularly the issue of refugee. Remember, we are all potential refugee. What you do now will reflect into the future. So let's help one another and bring about a great world that we want to see. On behalf of Cavendish University, thank you so much for making this possible. And of course, this program was powered by Fortress Media and Vetex. What has been me, Danji Duncan Simwaza. Have a beautiful and ambitious day.